To this special luncheon. You know, as faculty, we do not like to have meetings. We do not like to have events during chapel. It just sends a message that we don't want to be part of that, and that is not the case. The case today is that we have a very special guest that we cannot get in front of all of us if we don't take this opportunity. So it's a unique time. Dr. Poliakoff, the president of ACTA, who gives us our A grade every year for the last 5 years, is here with us to talk about ACTA and the importance of higher education. Dr. Sweeting wanted to introduce him, but cannot because today the Board of Trustees is here. Today, tonight, all day tomorrow, and he needs to be in those meetings. But he has provided a video to introduce him. In about 20 minutes from now, we'll cue the video and ask Dr. Poliakoff to speak. But before we start our lunch, let me pray for us. God, thank you for this group of faculty. Thank you for Dr. Poliakoff and his important work, not only at ACTA and in Washington, D.C., but in higher education and focusing on the importance of the general education curriculum that all students share. We love our majors. We love preparing our students in the fields that are important to us. But we also do understand that every student shares this core component of courses that make us unique in what we offer. We thank you that we have an A grade with ACTA, one of very few schools that realize that achievement. So God, thank you for how that has orchestrated at our university. God, I do thank you that in this room, preparing to talk about these things are our faculty from our entire university, from the College of Adult Graduate Studies, who have programs online and in places around Colorado that just help students, adult students, attain goals, dreams that they thought they had left behind and are now pursuing to be professionals in the area that they really love. So God, thank you for all of our adult students. Thank you for the faculty that teach them and mentor them and prepare them for very important fields. God, I do thank you always for our College of Undergraduate Studies faculty, the faculty here with our 18 to 21-year-olds who are making all life choices. And I just thank you for these people walking alongside and helping them make the next right step. So God, thank you for the work we do at Colorado Christian University. Keep us constantly focused on how important our work is. It is big work. It's important work. And so, God, don't make us overwhelmed with the importance, but just guide us and give us wisdom and give us energy and give us courage. So, God, thank you for this luncheon. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Please enjoy lunch in about 20 minutes. We'll invite Dr. Poliakoff to the stage. Please continue to eat. Don't chat. But please continue to eat. You need to do something up here?
Today's faculty forum. I'm so glad you're here, and I wish I could be with you in person, but today we have our Board of Trustees in town. So we're meeting higher duty calls. We're meeting right now, and yet we're excited about what you're going to hear in the next few minutes. It's been our joy and privilege to have as our guest the last few days Dr. Michael Poliakoff. Dr. Poliakoff is the president, the third president of ACTA, the American Council of Trustees and Alumni. He was appointed to that post in 2016. ACTA is an independent nonprofit organization committed to academic freedom, academic excellence, and accountability at America's colleges and universities. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He previously served as Vice President for Academic Affairs and Research at the University of Colorado and in senior roles at the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Council on Teacher Quality, and the American Academy for Liberal Education and the Pennsylvania Department of Education. He has taught at Georgetown University, George Washington University, Hillsdale College, and the University of Illinois in Chicago. He received his BA from Yale University. He went on to study at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar. I didn't know that, Michael. That's wonderful. We've got to talk about that. And then he was at the University of Michigan, where he earned his PhD in Classical Studies. He has been a junior fellow at the Center for Hellenic Studies, and his research has been supported by the National Endowment of the Humanities. He's the author of numerous books and journal articles in classical studies and educational policy, and has received the American Philological Association's Excellence in Teaching Award and the Pennsylvania Department of Education's Distinguished Service to Education Award. Wow. Well, we're glad he's here, but the thing I wanted him to talk about was this rating business. There are all kinds of ratings out there, and you've probably seen posted on some of our websites and banners that CCU has been ranked in the top 2% nationally for now 6 years in a row by ACTA. What does that mean? I think it's an important question for our trustees to think about, which they were hearing Dr. Poliakoff last night. I think it's important for our faculty to know about. What does that rating mean? Why is it important? Why is having a core curriculum, a solid core curriculum in these subjects, so important right now? Right now, because at this particular time, there's a deepening disorientation and disorder that is evidenced in so many quarters of American higher education. There is a growing lack of confidence in American universities among people. Polls have documented this. People are questioning the value proposition of what they get when they go to college and how prepared they will be to become citizens, to be prepared for a global marketplace. And I think you need to know a little bit more deeply about what this ACTA rating is all about. One of the delights for me was to read through the ACTA booklet, which they put out each year, What Will They Learn? And it's a survey of core requirements of our nation's colleges and universities, and it shows how CCU rates with others, and then it goes into a little more detail about why this matters. So, would you please join me in welcoming our special guest, Dr. Michael Poliakoff, as he comes to speak to us. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sweeting, for that really kind, wonderful introduction. I'll have to share that in person a little later on. What I particularly want to say now is how honored I am to address this eminent, dedicated faculty. CCU does things that the rest of the nation needs to look at and learn from. You know, I have to confess, when I was looking over my notes yesterday, my eyes began to well with tears as I remembered that the last time I was on this campus, it was with Bill Armstrong, who was showing me with such pride the extraordinary growth of the university. And I thought back even longer. The first time I was on this campus was in 2010, and it wasn't nearly the magnificent campus that it is today, but there was something already really magnificent about it, which was the people, the faculty, and that was the great wisdom of Bill Armstrong to develop this kind of community. And I'm just overjoyed, bless God, that in President Sweeting, CCU has that great leadership that's going to take CCU on to even greater heights. So with that, let me say thank you for the opportunity to be with you to share some thoughts about the great achievement of Colorado Christian University. Now, I have to correct one thing that Dr. Parks said in her introduction. ACTA did not give CCU an A. CCU earned an A. Through the hard work of its faculty, and I will say it was wonderful to see the rapidity with which CCU rose to the challenge of developing a curriculum that is in the top 2%, joined by only 23 other colleges and universities around the nation. And Dr. Sweeting, in great wisdom, properly framed the question, why is this so important? Not only for CCU, but even more so for the nation as a whole. As I thought about what I wanted to share with you today, not surprisingly, and I think appropriately for CCU to go back to our roots and our thoughts, the things that have shaped us, a passage came to me from the church father Gregory of Nyssa. Those of you who know his work realize that he was a church father. He was also quite a Platonist. Dr. Plato, yes, in front of me. And among the many wonderful pieces of wisdom he shared with us is this one. The true satisfaction of the soul's desire consists in constantly going on with her quest and never ceasing in her ascent, seeing that every fulfillment of the soul's desire continuously generates a further desire for the transcendent. And that's what happens on this campus. That's what you are doing for your students. And I'm going to switch over for a moment to the practical as well. And here I'm going to quote Cardinal John Henry Newman from 1852. He said, a man, and of course this is 19th century Oxford, so we can say a person, but a person of well-improved faculties has the command of another's knowledge. A man without them has not the command of his own. A man who has been trained to think upon one subject or for one subject only will never be a good judge even in that one, whereas the enlargement of his circle gives him increased knowledge and power in a rapidly increasing ratio. He goes on to say, a true university training prepares a person to fill any post with credit and to master any subject with facility. And that is your great gift to the students of CCU and your great gift to the nation, because they will be our leaders. And this is ACTA's work to make sure that the rest of the nation knows what you are doing that is so very important. Let's see. Well, I've got President Sweeting there again. Let's see. There we go. Your core curriculum. This is really a thing of beauty when one thinks of all of the things that students will get before they leave this university. They will understand that great work of religious wisdom, the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, 12 credit hours, and as well to recognize that this is one of the great engines of Western civilization. They get great training in writing. They will have the experience that, shockingly, only a minority of students around the country get, of reading real literary texts and understanding what it means to read something carefully, to parse it, to understand its dominant voice and its hidden meanings. They will have a course in economics. Less than 3% of the colleges and universities around the country require that, to our nation's peril. They will understand the heritage of the West. They will understand the history of this nation, and we're going to focus on that for some length in the moments to come. They will have a background in mathematics. It is not okay to say math is hard. Sidebar. Does anyone remember what the American Association of Universities Women did when Mattel put out a Barbie doll that would say, "Math class is tough"? Back in the 90s, they forced Mattel to take it off the market, and they were right. Don't influence a generation of young girls to think that this is not a subject for them. And of course now that disease has only spread, where it's too hard for everybody. Let's take algebra off the high school curriculum and maybe get it out of the college curriculum as well. This is incredible damage to the young people of our nation. And of course a real study of empirical science, which has been the reason that we're all living longer today and why we have these tremendous tools that we need to learn. That gets us back to biblical studies and philosophy that we need to learn to use well and wisely. And I need to learn how to use these devices. So I'm delighted that Colorado Christian University has been able to celebrate this achievement. And it joins ranks with other great colleges and universities. This is, of course, I'm now putting on my pragmatic marketing hat here. This is a real advantage for a college or university to be able to say to parents, well, your child may not like math, but your child is going to do math at our university. Your child is going to do science and economics, going to do some of the heavy lifting of cognitive growth. And here, let me disclose, my daughter goes to Christopher Newport University. When she was choosing a college, she said to me, "Dad, I really like What Will They Learn, because now I can choose a school that gets an F, and I won't have to do math in college." And I said, well, no, dear, your mother and I have something to say about this. And she is now having a great education at Christopher Newport University, which took out a half-page color ad in the Washington Post to celebrate this achievement. President Tribble recognized the market niche that this gives the university. And I don't mean to be opportunistic or cynical about this. This is an achievement that should be celebrated because it is an achievement of real value. We all know as professors that we give grades to encourage improvement, to benchmark, to move those who need encouragement forward more energetically. We don't give grades, they are earned by students. Their value is in helping students improve. And the work of What Will They Learn is to share around the nation which schools are doing this task well and which schools need to improve. And I do say occasionally we do have to call out the ones that are not doing right by their students. Some of them are very prestigious. University of Rochester, fine school, puts in its catalog in bold print, "We have no required courses." And the public needs to understand what a dereliction of duty that is for undergraduates. So What Will They Learn, which we put out every year. And I will say, just on the technical side of this, we do this review de novo every year with a crop of the kind of wonderful college students as interns who make us remember that American higher education can be really fantastic. They go through the catalog of every one of the 1,100 colleges and universities, and then that folder is reviewed by one of the senior staff to make sure that it's entirely accurate. It's very labor intensive, it's a labor of love. And here is the real kicker, breaking news. We are halfway through putting together a database of 40,000 college guidance counselors at high schools around the nation. We are going to arm them with what will they learn. They work hard to prepare their students for colleges. We want them to be able to share the message with students and their parents. Choose wisely. I'm channeling here Indiana Jones. Choose wisely. Don't go to a school where the academic culture is going to betray all the things that students and families and their teachers work to achieve in secondary school. Go to a school that will build upon it. We've got a lot of work to do in this nation. As you will see, CCU is in that very slender band of 2% of the schools that require 6 or 7, and I don't think I'm giving away any confidences. We're working on moving to the 7 here. I would like to see another perfect A school in America, not just because of the grade, but because of that other wonderful, important piece in undergraduate education. And I realize these things are difficult. Some of the schools we've worked with in strengthening their core curricula do it over a period of years, building the infrastructure, building the capacity, and most importantly, something that wasn't such an issue at CCU but is an issue at other schools, building the understanding, the will to create a really dynamic, strong core curriculum. This is not easy. But as you'll see, some 60% or more of the schools require 3 or fewer of these core subjects. This is very dangerous for the nation. Well, I'm going to start by looking at the American history issue. When Thomas Jefferson met with the other future leaders of the University of Virginia at the Rockfish Gap Tavern to create the plan for the University of Virginia, one of the things that they saw as absolutely crucial was development that will form the statesmen, legislatures, and judges on whom public prosperity and individual happiness are so much to depend, to expound the principles and structure of government. Well, only some 18% of colleges and universities around our nation do that. And the surveys that we have done show us just what damage that causes. But let me first share with you what Thomas Jefferson's colleague and friend had to say. Learned institutions ought to be a favorite object with every free people. They throw light over the public mind, which is the best security against the crafty and dangerous encroachments on the public liberty. A free society is at risk when its citizens do not understand their institutions of government, the way they were formed, and the way they can be in jeopardy. Since the beginning of this century, ACTA has been tracking what's going wrong. These are the most elite universities represented in this survey. And by the way, let me say about our surveys, we use GFK Roper. We use an extremely well-respected survey firm to make sure that we're doing this in a way that is scientifically proper and defensible with a very small margin of error. Well, of course, you can see this goes back 18 years when Beavis and Butthead were all the rage. But just about every college student, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oberlin, you know, all the Williams, Amherst, the ones that parents kill to get their students into to their detriment so they can pay $250,000 for this kind of bad education. I'll leave that aside for a moment. Snoop Dogg, yes. But we get down to the formative moments in our nation's history, and we really see the drop-off in understanding. We did this survey 3 years ago in 2015, and we asked some questions that bore down a little bit more closely to citizenship. They couldn't name the president of the Senate. The second one is the one that bothers me the most. What are the term lengths of members of Congress? Now, this wasn't a flunkaroo where they actually had to come up with 6 and 2 all of their own. It was multiple choice, and they couldn't get that right. So if they vote at all, they go into a voting booth and they don't know how long they're sending their elected representatives up to Washington for. How the Constitution is amended, and even the question, you know, well, what is the Bill of Rights? They couldn't identify that as a set of amendments. 18% of the colleges and universities in this nation have some kind of course in American history or government. And I was doing a little hit on Illinois at the moment. That's why I have Illinois at the bottom. They didn't appreciate it, but it's necessary. This one got us more clicks in social media than anything else we've ever done. Again, notice it's multiple choice. We have almost 10% of college graduates, and then another 5% who thought that John Kerry sat on the Supreme Court, who thought that Judith Sheindlin, a.k.a. Judge Judy, was on the Supreme Court. The press got this in a big way. We do use the media to get this message out. And it was only Huffington Post that went after me for this. That was a trick question. I said, well, what about the one on voting for lengths of time in Congress? The reporter did not actually want to include that part of the interview. But this is the danger that our nation is in. What's ACTA's response to this? Require it. We're very impatient of schools that say, well, our students already know this. They learned it in high school. Please. Our students are really bright. They just sort of pick it up. We have it diffused throughout the curriculum. No, we know that is not true. Well, let's move more broadly to the core curriculum. There's a long history of thinking that it is not necessary. This was the response of the president of Princeton when Harvard decided to drop its math requirement for undergraduates. And I've always loved this. Don't say in the great universities of Europe that our Cambridge no longer requires mathematics. But in 1885, President McCosh could hardly have conceived of what was to come. Sorry, gone. There we go. The late Betty Capaldi Phillips, who was the provost at University of Arizona State University, and I did a study of two things that are going wrong. One is what we've been talking about already, which is the intellectual damage of a badly structured curriculum, a cafeteria line, a choose what you will, and also the financial damage that this does, particularly large institutions, large numbers of underfilled sections, rather than having a carefully structured set of signature core curriculum courses. This is a real threat, particularly in public flagship universities. But I like the sentiments that Betty shared, that when you give so much choice, people get lost. Betty was a research psychologist, so she brought all kinds of wonderful insight to this, that not just in education, but everywhere else, choice is not necessarily the friend of the uninitiated, which is, of course, what a group of 18, 19, 20-year-olds would be. I want to share with you another charming story. Judge Bray, the head of the Beasley Foundation in Virginia, took our study, and his board supported him entirely in declaring a moratorium on all higher education funding from their organization in the state of Virginia until schools earned an ACTA A. And then he would direct the funding from the foundation to helping them build the capacity to offer, for example, multiple sections of economics or whatever it was they might need. And he said to me in that beautiful Portsmouth accent, Michael, when I take my grandchildren to the grocery store, they don't run over to the vegetable counter. They don't run over to the fruit counter. They go for the ice cream and the candy. And that's what happens when you put out a big cafeteria line of courses. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. What's the damage in the nation when you don't have a wholesome, nutritional core curriculum? This is the National Assessment of Adult Literacy. It's been repeated twice, a huge federal study, first in 1992, then 2003. And I think the reason it hasn't been repeated is that Department of Education doesn't want to know how bad this is going to get. Well, to be in the proficient category, which note 69% of four-year college graduates do not attain, to be there, you have to be able to read 2 newspaper editorials and distinguish the different viewpoints in those 2 editorials. You have to be able to compute the total cost of food items if it had been given in cost per ounce. Things that we would be embarrassed if our middle school kids couldn't do. And yet, this is what this large federal study showed was the typical outcome for colleges and universities around the nation. Again, moving from the danger of civic illiteracy, we have a real problem of lack of knowledge of the building blocks of what makes for success in career. And of course, Richard Aram's study with the Giuseppe Roxa, Academically Adrift, 36% of the students, and it was a large sample group, tested with the collegiate learning assessment, could show no significant cognitive gain after 4 years, 4 expensive years of college. And what was really, really so illuminating was what I put at the bottom line there, what our parents all told us before we went off to college. It doesn't matter where you go. It's a question of how hard you're going to work at it. And so the variation in cognitive gain is greater within institutions than between institutions. Prestige does not matter. And employers have made it perfectly clear that they're pretty fed up. When 26% of the employers, and again in this large study by the Conference Board, say that 26.2% of the 4-year college graduates have deficient writing skills, we know we've got a serious problem. It's a problem of scientific illiteracy. This was John Miller's study in Science Daily. We should take no pride in a finding that 70% of Americans cannot read and understand the science section of the New York Times. I was just beginning to channel C.P. Snow's Two Cultures, that it seems to be okay to show the equivalent of complete verbal illiteracy by saying, well, Newton, who's he? What are these laws of motion? This is not acceptable, and we need to develop a culture in which it is not acceptable, because otherwise we are sheep being led by technocrats. It is not just a question of intellectual gaps, it's a question of citizenship. So what do we get instead? I hope this is not going to ruin anybody's lunch. ACTA is, by the way, the national expert on zombie courses. We were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal a few years ago. Now, some of these may just be faddish names for courses that have serious content, but I draw attention to zombies in popular media, film studies, zombie renaissance, zombies, monsters, and superheroes. That one's at Harvard. And, again, let's get back to calculations. If you figure that an elite education costs now about $250,000, you're looking at, what, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for the experience of studying zombies in popular media. I asked my daughter, who's at Christopher Newport, as I said, and I was just telling Professor Plato, it's a wonderful thing for a parent when your daughter says, Dad, could you hurry and mail me my copy of Plato's Republic? I left it on my shelf at home. I said, yes, it'll be in the mail tomorrow morning, priority. I asked her, I said, well, what do you think about a college course on zombies? And she said, Dad, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. That's what kids do on the internet. So, this is what's happened, the cafeteria line, the non-nutritional food. And I realize foreign language is becoming a topic at Christopher Newport. Godspeed to all of you. This is important. There is indeed a real employer benefit. There is a salary premium for students who have real proficiency in a foreign language. And I did mention that occasionally, although I try to be a civil and nice person at all times, and not to embarrass my fellow man, as religious leaders have properly reminded us, I really lost my temper at Hamilton College. Hamilton announced with a lot of fanfare that for the first time they would have a requirement. There had been an open curriculum before then. Every department would develop a diversity course. Now, what that means in, say, chemistry or physics. I'm not quite sure. I'm a little troubled by what it could turn out to be. But that every department was going to have develop and require a diversity course. So I got on Mary Kissel's show, and I said, shame on them. They don't have a language requirement, but they're going to have a diversity course. So they want their multiculturalism on the cheap. They want to talk the talk, but they don't want to walk the walk. If you respect another culture, learn the language. Acquire the habit of mind that the world doesn't all speak English, and that we can't be ugly Americans, as that joke goes. If you know 3 languages, you're trilingual, 2 languages, you're bilingual, 1 language, you're American. You know, we got to get over this. So, but at any rate, it also makes sense financially. So I come back to Colorado Christian University. You all have done brilliantly. You have set a great example for everybody. And you know, this is something that I could not be more grateful for. You know, I come from a different religious tradition, but we are all part of that great task of healing a fractured world, of building the world according to God's plan. And we don't do that with ignorance. We don't do that by developing students who don't take issues of character, who don't take issues of the spirit and the soul seriously. So it is my great privilege to be your co-worker in building and continuing to maintain this extraordinary curriculum and getting your message out all around the country. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. It's a real honor to be with you. Ah, okay.
And I don't mean Homer or whoever that
Yeah, Simpson, yes. I guess I have to say, I'm so, at times, so worn. Oh, okay.
We only got an A-. What can we do to get the A?
Add the foreign language requirement. Three semesters, in other words, get up to the intermediate level. And any language works, ancient or modern. And you know, I realize that it's not easy to build capacity for that, but it is an extraordinary gift to students. You will hear a certain amount of groaning, just as the math department here is groaning about taking a math course. But this is something that is so important for society and so cognitively enriching for students that it is worth the labor. Please.
When we ask students what they think the purpose of a college education is, it tends to focus on job preparation, certification, and so on. What are the best universities doing to persuade students and parents about the value of liberal arts education?
There's good data out there, and I'm happy to share it, that when employers are surveyed, and the Hart survey does this every year, they respond, what do they want to see in the people they hire? And those things tend to come down to understanding of quantitative issues, in other words, mathematical, scientific background, strong writing skills, the ability to deal with difficult interpretive issues, read literature. These are things that do tend to surface. We've got a good body of survey responses from employers that tell us that it's not simply a matter of the major. In fact, they were very explicit about that. The major is less important than that general body of information. You know, I'm very sensitive to this. The return on investment is a perfectly reasonable thing for students and their parents to be aware of. But I would always add the zinger that Bureau of Labor Statistics has done some studies that show how often young adults change jobs. The last time I looked at this, over 11 job changes between the ages of 18 and 46. Now, some of those will be small. You know, go from being a program officer to being a manager or whatever. Some of them are going to be career changes. And I once dug into this a little bit because I was annoyed at what was coming out of Georgetown about the practical skills. And I thought, it was during the recession, what happened to structural engineers? And what I discovered was that structural engineers were really hurting during the recession. Of course, the building enterprises are down. I didn't follow up on that, but if I'd had the resources to survey more deeply, my guess is that the structural engineers who could write well, who understood micro and macroeconomics so they could be agile in developing industries around what they were doing, were the ones that were going to come out okay during that crisis. So yeah, you can train to make widgets quickly, and there's no shame in doing that. Earning an honest day's wage is a good thing, but you're likely to find that those widgets are obsolete really quickly. And parents and students need to know that, you know, in my day, there were people who went into medicine because they loved the idea of being healers. God bless them. These are the people that belong in medicine. There were those who saw it as the most lucrative career. Well, a lot of those people are deeply disappointed now because it's not the most lucrative career, nor should it ever have been. But this is a way of reminding people that today's pot of gold may be full of lead at some point in the future. So, you know, choose according to your skills, according to your heart, but get the kind of foundation that allows you to be intellectually and vocationally agile. I'm sorry, that got to be very long-winded.
We might have one more question.
Please. Oh, we could do two. I'll try to be quick.
Yeah, I love the idea of language. I wish that everyone could spend a year or two in another country, you know, as far as diversity. We have a little bit of a conversation. It's not really tongue in cheek, but a little bit. A few months ago, in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article about coding, computer coding, and it compared learning computer coding versus a language. It said maybe in this day and age, learning how to code might be as important or more useful, you know, to students than even learning a foreign language. I don't know that I believe that. We've had some conversation about it, but I would just like to hear what you say about that.
Oh, certainly an important part of the conversation. Coding may be a vocational skill that will have a very much faster return. It will not allow people to acquire the habits of mind for global citizenship. And that's a very significant issue. Nor does it give them the same sense of nuance. When John Kennedy said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," some of you may remember that we winced. Couldn't he have asked somebody who really spoke German, you know, what that meant? And, you know, I'm not trying to make fun of our late president, but the takeaway from that is that learning a language takes you to a whole other level of communication. And you're not going to get that through coding. We have time for one more?
So many schools perform so poorly. So kind of two-pronged question here. Do they care? And if they don't, how do we get them to care?
That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about the high school guidance counselor outreach, and our preliminary surveys show that there's a lot of interest. So let's let the good actors get stronger and the bad actors wake up. But the fact is, when I first started on this project in 2010, I got the academic equivalent of hate mail from dozens and dozens of schools. They were furious. How come you gave me that grade? And I didn't give you that grade. You earned that grade. And we'd write them long letters about, you know, where their deficiencies were. Now that was a good sign. It meant they were listening and they were bothered. Now we don't get those letters. We get dozens of letters asking for technical support. And again, it's a slow process of moving forward. But we see the tide turning. One of my favorites is I think it was Marymount in northeastern Pennsylvania, that put in the newspaper, we're the only school in our area that got a B from ACTA. And of course, my feeling is, well, let's go for the A. But clearly, you know, schools recognize that people are watching. And this project does get profile in the Wall Street Journal, so boards of trustees read it. And that does tend to wake up leadership. Now, if I could hold you for 30 seconds more, I just want to read you in closing one of my favorite passages, this one from Plato's Apology of Socrates. But I think it just kind of sums up all the good things that are happening here. Gentlemen of Athens, I honor and I love you, yet I shall obey God rather than you. And while I have life and strength, I shall never cease from the practice and teaching of philosophy, exhorting anyone I meet after my manner and persuading that person, saying, "O my friend, why do you, who are a citizen of the great and mighty and wise city of Athens, care so much about laying up the greatest amount of money and honor and reputation, and so little about wisdom and truth and the greatest improvement of your soul?" Well, this is a place where people understand that you first work on the improvement of the soul and the character, and that all the other good things in life follow from that. So thank you so much for everything you're doing, and thank you again for the honor of being with you. Of course.
He'll stay a few minutes. If you have something you'd like to ask him, please come up, finish your lunch, or stay and chat.